for human dignity. Brooke?
Major, we saw this range of response even among Republicans. Help us understand how the GOP is responding. And then also, is this moving the needle for anyone, or do Trump supporters continue to support him and Trump critics continue to vilify him, and onward we march?
Well, that's going to play out over the next couple of days, the back half of your question, how this event will affect either Trump supporters' interpretation of him or the intensity of opposition to President Trump. I think it's an important moment, one that's going to play out for several days, and any rash judgment about how important it is in the moment, I think, will be impaired. We have to see this play itself out for a couple of days. So Republicans are either trying to ignore it if they can, not releasing statements unless forced to engage on it, and when they are, being as cautious as they can, or in some cases condemning it. Some Republicans have done that. Many Republicans have said nothing. And even Speaker Paul Ryan, not only what he said that people could see in our piece, but his downcast body language, looking straight down, not engaging the questioner at all, calling it unhelpful, to put it mildly. So Republicans are struggling with this in very real ways. But it's worth pointing out, this is going to be a struggle for Democrats, too, not in their sense of outrage. That will be genuine. It will be a struggle for Democrats because the fact of the matter is, whatever you think about this president personally, this president is the only means by which Democrats can achieve a legislative remedy for DACA/Dreamers. That's something that is coming up in the not-too-distant future. Maybe not next week, but certainly by the 1st of March, when the deadline expires fully. Democrats need to reach a legislative compromise, and they're going to have to do that with the president that they maybe dislike, maybe vociferously oppose, maybe after these remarks find almost impossible to deal with. But the reality is they will have to deal with this president, and the immediate effect of the president's remarks is to stall those immigration negotiations, because it's basically put everyone back a few days.
Okay,
because
so
this is not the climate or atmosphere to re-engage after a moment like this.
Okay, so you pre-guessed my second question, which is, what does this mean for immigration reform? Because there's been certainly no discussion among folks like us about the content of the bill. No one in Washington seemed to be talking about it today. It was just Tuesday that things seemed to be going so well with that bipartisan meeting, the talk of, maybe we could do comprehensive, how fast things have fallen so quickly. So where can we go from here?
Well, this is a really important week in terms of highlighting the difficulty the president faces on navigating this issue, which is immigration. Did he win the Republican primaries because he was the hardest line Republican on immigration? Yes, he did. Did he win the presidency in part because of that hardline stance?
But
yes,
hardline
he did.
In an elegant way that emphasized the wall, but was squishier on some other things, which gave people like Ted Cruz
others might
fits.
suggest there were aspects of it that were not too elegant, but I'll take your point. But the problem for the president now is he's got to get into the nitty-gritty of the issue. And when you get into the nitty-gritty of the issue and there's give and take on immigration, and some of your supporters regard any of the give from the White House as betrayal or backtracking or the A word, amnesty, then the president realizes he has some tough political navigating to do. And when the president said Tuesday, "I'll sign any bill you send to me," looking at Democrats and Republicans, many of his supporters said, "Wait a minute, are you prepared to give away the House on immigration?" And then the president's internal compass told him he better strike a harder bargain. And as he was trying to strike that harder bargain, as the week progressed, we got to this meeting yesterday in the Oval Office in which not only was the president driving a hard bargain, he was using language that many Republicans find discomforting, mildly repellent at other levels, and Democrats and people around the world have denounced wholeheartedly in the aftermath.
Another important thing happened, and I want to make sure we find time to get to it. On Friday, the president again stopped short of reimposing these sanctions on Iran in connection to the nuclear deal. Of course, this was another campaign promise where Mr. Trump said he was going to rip up the deal. So how does the White House square those two things?
Well, it's a success for those who have been lobbying the president internally. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, Defense Secretary James Mattis, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, all of whom have said, since President Trump was sworn in, we know you hate this deal. But this deal does provide a framework that dramatically limits Iran's pursuit of a nuclear weapon. And until we come up with something better, don't get rid of it. Because if you get rid of it and we don't have an alternative, Iran will start up the process of pursuing a nuclear weapon, which is what we don't want to have happen. So there's been a recertification. No sanctions that were there before will be placed on Iran. Interestingly, what the administration announced today is other sanctions will be applied to punish Iran for pursuing ballistic missile technology and human rights violations, which include censorship and arresting those in the streets who've been protesting against the government. So that is a separate track of sanctions. What the administration is going to try to do now, and it's going to be a very, very tough process, go to European allies and say, we want new and harsher conditions on the Iranians because you've told us you don't want them to obtain a nuclear weapon. We want harsher limits to improve our sense of satisfaction that Iran can't get there. Whether the administration will be able to negotiate that or not is, as administration officials told me today, an open question. They're going to try, they're hopeful, but they're not optimistic.
Okay, Major Garrett, and at the end of another massively busy